Hi, Rachel. Thank you
Hey there.
so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
So excited to chat with you because you have such a unique perspective. You are a CMO who essentially is pitching to marketers every
Right.
single day. First off the bat, I would love to hear a bit, probably an abridged version, about the value of AI in marketing, because I read a blog post you wrote, and there's a bunch of different buckets, right? There's
Right.
analytics, there's the actual
Right.
creative process. So
Right.
we'd love to hear from you a bit about those touch points.
Yeah. I think there's two big things that are exciting for marketers now when you think about the intersection of marketing and AI. I think it's as AI disrupts some very traditional marketing work streams like brand discovery. So if you go back a couple years, you probably would have gone to Google, you would search for something. That's still valid, but increasingly people are going to places like ChatGPT, Perplexity. So for marketers, navigating that shift, and I think because AI is not only powering that, what you have to understand is how can I make sure I show up well? So that's the first thing marketers have to think about. How does AI change the dynamics of brand discovery? And then how does AI change, because it can help you move faster as a marketing team, the ability to create content, to map those contents to customer data and create personalized experiences. I think for marketers now, AI amplifies their teams, it amplifies their creativity, their innovation. I think working with not only the tools that Adobe has, but just across your teams as you think about these work streams, how do you make sure that you're showing up in LLM successfully? How do you make sure you're building the right content for the right customer at that right moment? And I think, like I said, AI helps teams be more agile, move faster, but also when marketers understand how it's disrupting those traditional work streams, working with us, we can help them navigate those successfully.
What are some tools that you wish you would have had perhaps earlier in your own marketing career that now are possible because of AI?
Um, Adobe GenStudio, 100%. Because, if I go back to, when I was a marketing manager working on campaigns, right? So the way that would work is you come up with a campaign idea, there'd be a brief, that would take time. The idea, you'd have the creative, and then you would take weeks and weeks and weeks building the assets to, basically have them go live across all the channels you had. But that asset production, because it took so long, by the time you saw the actual campaign come to life, months could have passed, and maybe kind of the moment you were banking on has passed a little bit. But more importantly, as you put it out across your channels, you might think, oh, it isn't performing as well as I had hoped, but because you invested so much, time and energy, blood, sweat, and tears, you're like, I got to keep going with it. But now, with AI, with generative AI, because you can create that content so quickly, you can scale that content, scale those assets, then you really can do more experimentation. You can test and learn what are the right sort of headlines or content or creative that really resonates with a customer. And I feel like AI has been the thing that's really supercharged that. And so, yes, I definitely think if I had GenStudio when I was building campaigns, I'd be so much faster, so much more agile.
Do you find yourself currently using tools like either GenStudio or any other AI tools in your daily workflow too?
I mean, the beauty about being at Adobe is we're customer zero. So when you mentioned that I'm marketing to marketers, it's very true. But it's also true that as we work with our product teams, as we hear from customers, what are the challenges they're trying to tackle, then, we're working with the product teams to bring those products to life, and then we're using them, right, every day to think about, hey, how are we building campaigns? How are we building personalization? How are we navigating brand discovery shifts? So that's actually pretty cool. And then I feel like when I sit down with marketers, I can say, what are your challenges? How can we help you? And a lot of that feedback, again, becomes products that we then use.
How are you so open to hopping on the bandwagon of AI pretty early on? Because I feel like a lot of people go into marketing because of the passion of the creative, of telling a story. So was there any internal turmoil within you? And then how did you, I guess, jump that hurdle?
I've always been in the tech industry, so I actually am fascinated whenever there's, disruptions, when there's new technology. I think that's just one of the amazing things about being in this industry is seeing all the innovation. So I was excited about it from the jump. But I do think as I talk to customers, a lot of questions now about, how should I navigate these shifts in traditional work streams? How should I think about my customers? How should I think about my brand? What can help me move faster? So there is a lot of meeting customers where they are in their AI adoption journey and helping them understand, here's where you are, here's where you could be, how do we help you get there? Actually, one of the things we're talking about this week is we just launched a customer experience AI maturity index for customers to say, here, let us help you understand across a couple of different vectors, where are you in your AI adoption journey? But more importantly, how are you operationalizing that across your team, across your work streams? So I think that's very helpful for marketers to think, okay, where do I need to be? Where am I now? How do I want to make this work? So we're excited about that. And customers have been pretty positive about it.
How do you address concerns rooted in some companies or some campaigns who have used marketing, AI for their marketing, and it's fallen flat just because maybe the content just seemed too AI sloppy or different missteps that might overall affect how people view AI and marketing as a whole?
Yeah, I think for every company, they have to think about, and this is what CMOs do all day, is you think about your brand. Like, what's your brand ethos? How do you bring it to life? And you want to make sure that even if you're using AI, you don't get what I think of as sort of brand drift or, it doesn't look right. So one of the things we announced today was Adobe Brand Intelligence, which allows you to take your brand guidelines and your brand knowledge across your teams and embed them so that all of your assets can be brand faithful. You don't get brand drift. It doesn't look like AI slop. It looks true to your brand. And I think that's what marketers are hungry for is I want to move quickly. I want to be agile, but I want to make sure that whatever experience I give to my customer is accretive to my brand and it's accretive to my business in a positive way. And so I think we're excited about that.
If you were encouraging somebody who was, whether an individual like a freelancer or even somebody who's leading a team, to start tinkering with AI in their workflows for marketing specifically, where would you encourage them? What's like the easiest point of entry to start experimenting?
I think when you think about AI across the big sort of work streams that marketers really care about, I think you have to think about brand discovery, brand visibility. So how are customers finding you? How are you showing up? Especially in these new surfaces like LLMs, ChatGPT, et cetera. And then I think, one, understanding that. So I think that's a good place to really kind of get to grips on like, where's my brand? How is it showing up? How do I want to ensure it shows up? But then thinking about your customer data and the content you're building and the journeys you're building, like the data becomes so critical. And I think this is why when I think about conversations I've had with CMOs about using Adobe, it's like, look, not only are we going to help you with the customer data you have, building that great customer foundation, but all of the context and all of the experience that we have to help you build these right customer experiences. But I definitely think thinking about the brand visibility, your content supply chain, and then the customer experiences you build are sort of three big building blocks that I think people can tackle first.
I like that you mentioned thinking and like thought process, because a lot of using AI tools, at least in my experience, properly or successfully, involves kind of shifting the way you think.
Yeah.
What's one thing that you've learned from, again, using these tools, talking to customers, a little mind shift change that perhaps helps unlock a lot more potential?
Right. One of the things that, across my team and when we talk to customers, that we're sort of encouraging people to think of it as, if you're marketing your customers all the time, if you think about, for example, brand visibility and showing up in an LLM, that comes from not just having a great experience when customers come, your human customers, but agents. How are agents reading your content? How are they, being trained on your content? So you almost have to think about it as basically you have as a marketer a new audience, right? So what's the education, what's the training, what's the experience you're building for that agent audience to make sure that your brand shows up well? If you think about, how you absolutely want to put information out about your brand or experiences out, you really do have to think about agents. And I think that helps you kind of mentally shift on, oh, okay, I know how to do that, right? If I think about how to acquire an audience or educate an audience, yeah, all right, that makes sense.
Also love that you touched on like the hottest topic of the year, agents. How do you, again, encourage your clients and the people you talk to every day to not just think agents and think doing the work for me? Like now I'm not in the loop or I'm not actually doing any of the creative work. I'm just delegating it to a robot.
Right.
Yeah.
So the way we think about it is customer experience orchestration. So, and the word orchestration matters in this context because as a marketer, you're thinking about, I have my creative, I have my campaign, but more importantly, as my customer moves across a lot of different surfaces out there. So it could be your earned channels, could be your paid, could be your owned. How do you make sure that that customer experience of your brand stays faithful and true to that brand, to your brand aesthetic, to your message, to your content? So really, how are you orchestrating that journey across all of these touch points? And I think that's the exciting part now, is that AI gives you the ability to do that as marketers. Not only can you move more quickly, like in building content, personalizing that content, but also amplifying your team's expertise and your team's experience, because now they can think about, what is the campaign I want to orchestrate? And then between and across my team members, how do I have, potentially purpose-built agents or coworkers helping me do that, right? So they're asking like a supporting cast and helping marketing managers think about that experience orchestration and how they want to bring that orchestration and those customer journeys to life for customers.
Right. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Before we wrap up, I would love to get your advice for aspiring marketers, right? So I know I went to journalism school, and you spend a lot of time learning the technical in and outs of operating these tools, right? Like Premiere and Photoshop, I remember taking whole classes on them, and now a lot of the experiences that you have shipped with AI make it so much easier to do things that would take me hours and do in the button. So where would you encourage this new generation of marketers to kind of shift their focus in maybe not as much in the tools, but perhaps in learning how to, again, I'll leave it up to you to finish the sentence.
I think it's learning how to get deep on a customer problem, understand what it is your customer is looking for. I always think, if you starting with your customer, working backwards, that's critical. So as a marketer, it's like, what is the customer opportunity or problem you're trying to solve for? And then what is the content? What is the experience that you'd want to orchestrate to get that customer engaged, to help that customer understand that, you're the answer to the problem, or you're the solution they're looking for. So I think it's less about, the tools. It's more about, what's the judgment, what's the understanding of the offering the customer, the market. That kind of critical judgment and, sort of high fidelity judgment is really important. It's always been important, and I think now marketers really focusing on that I think is the game changer for any new marketer coming up or any current marketer.
Incredible. And then, again, just to round it out, when I read your blog post from September 2025, you sounded super excited and super bullish on what AI could do for marketing. How do we stand today?
If anything, I'm even more excited. If you look around here, we have 14,000 people joining us. And I think, over the last couple of years, there's definitely moved from folks being a little concerned to like, okay, this is exciting. Help me understand what I need to do. Help me understand how I can navigate it to take advantage of these shifts. But I'm absolutely excited about everything that's coming.
Well, thank you so much for your time, Rachel. This was an incredible chat. Thanks for all your advice.
Thank you. Yep.